call it order the special Town of Delafield Board of Supervisor meeting for Tuesday, January 28th. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden.
Present.
Supervisor Miller.
Here.
Supervisor Wolfley.
Present.
Supervisor Berkowitz is not present at the moment, and Chairman Kranek.
Present,
Thank you.
but we do have a quorum, so proceed. Citizens' comments. There are no citizens in the audience. Next item would be approval of the minutes from January 14th, 2025.
I motion to approve the minutes with some suggested changes that I talked to our town clerk about. Specifically, the language could add in, maybe after the first paragraph, that, or someplace in there, that the ordinance is addressing new subdivisions, and it is we added to chapter 18 from chapter 11. Saying that, stop, just because I told I had to do it that way. If we want to stop for a moment and reword it, that's fine, but I just feel strongly that.
Which section specifically are you, like where, under C, I'm assuming, correct, but like which paragraph?
Well, okay, I had given some suggestions, and for following Robert's rules, either we table it, which we could discuss, or we could try to just get them done now. I just feel that we need to acknowledge that the whole reason we did this was because it was confusing. Even Supervisor Wolfley, you're the one that started off saying, you wanted it to be enforceable, and there was some confusion, with what does this apply to. So I feel like we need to say we moved this ordinance to chapter 18 so that it would be enforceable. I mean, it's not in here, it's not in our minutes, and I just think if I was a townsperson, they would want to know, because it's confusing, that this doesn't apply to the entire town, this is just for new subdivisions. So I think we need to say in there that this ordinance was moved, or this ordinance will be created under chapter 18, so that it's enforceable under HOA.
I mean, my issue is just that if it was mentioned, and I haven't looked at the video, and I'm sure it's there's somewhere in there.
I actually did go spend some time in there, and we did talk about it in there. That's why it's not on here, and I just feel like.
Yeah, I guess we can't go and add things to the minutes that weren't said in the meeting.
It was definitely said.
So as long as it's been somewhere articulated in the meeting.
So it was kind of pieced in during the minutes and not a full thought at one time, which is why I didn't include it as its individual item on here. But if somebody were to second and you guys were to agree, I would add it in.
He said it, and then I said it, that is why, because it is so confusing, that's why I feel like it's important, that it's, this ordinance is there, and because of the enforceability, that is why we didn't leave it under 11, we moved it to. Kranek said it, I talked about it.
Yeah, I understand that. I just believe that, not to be flippant, but I don't think many of our townsfolk actually read our minutes. I mean, if they're going to do it, they're going to go watch the YouTube video or, see that we, had, stated that the reason that we did this was to move it to, chapter 18 of the land division ordinance, or they'd go and read the ordinance. So, I mean, I think our clerk did a great job of capturing the essence of what was discussed and, trying to keep the minutes as simple as possible.
And I think that when people look at minutes, you will have some, you're right, probably most people don't, but you have some that will. You have some that might research it to find out about lighting ordinances. You have other communities that will research it, and I think it just gives us a very important point of reference, why we came to this conclusion under our attorney's advice. It was confusing, I think, for everybody. That's why we spent so much time talking about it. So I think we just, it's not even mentioned, and it was mentioned. We're not comment. It was definitely talked about in the meeting because we had to, explain why we did it this way.
So.
Just think that if you, again, all this is online now. If somebody was searching and Googling it for it, they'd see, oh, that's how the town of Delafield did it. Whereas right now you just sort of see there's some comments, and it's not that these comments are wrong. I just don't think they necessarily are the essence of what we talked about.
So if I understand correctly, after the first paragraph of the
I was just looking for a place.
5B, I think it's 5, or 9B, see? You wanted to say Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden indicated that the ordinance is addressing new subdivisions and was added to Chapter 18 from Chapter 11 to be enforceable through HOA.
Yeah, and that could be Cranick too, Chairman Cranick and Mahoney Ogden.
You can only speak for yourself on adding and taking things away from the minutes. It would have to be Chairman Cranick if he's speaking about what he said.
I just
So
listened
would you like it to be you
Well,
then?
I mean, I think it was both of us. We both said it, so however, I guess, I know I said it, Chairman Cranick said it too, but if he needs to, started it and I jumped in, we both kind of
Okay.
talked about it.
So I would just need a second if somebody agrees.
And then, actually, I have an additional
Oh,
comment that we
okay.
also did talk about, and that is because we decided to not, because we did it this way, we all talked about, again, we didn't necessarily have an action, but we talked, and actually Supervisor Wolfley, Cranick, and myself at least talked about the importance then of, we can learn from this and move on educating our residences from here on forward about lighting in the town of Delafield. So, education. And that was talked about. I think we could end with that. That's how we ended it, right before we approved it.
It sounds like a directional item that wasn't included in the motion. So that's why I omitted the educational portion of that.
It was just part of the minutes. It wasn't the motion.
Well,
it was the minutes.
So, I
it
mean-
says here, though, that I suggested that the enforcement mechanism could provide an opportunity to educate town residents about lighting standards, so it's there.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you got it. Okay, so, yep, it's there, opportunity to educate. Yep, that's in there, that counts. I just wanted the word educate.
Okay.
I mean, we want to stick with the reality of the conversation.
Yep.
So we want as much accuracy as possible.
Yep.
Right?
So, and that's
if
why,
everybody's
that's why
comfortable
I
with
felt so
that.
strongly to bring it up, because it was mentioned. Moving from 11 to 18 was definitely talked about.
Okay.
I'm motioning to approve the minutes with the addition, wherever we see fit, that
So I guess just by,
ordinance was clarified to be added to chapter 18 instead of being kept under chapter 11.
I mean, my only ask on that is just obviously, if we're gonna pull that information, that it be pulled in some type of verbatim or pretty darn close to section of like the conversation. I don't mind adding something to the minutes. I just don't, the minutes shouldn't be used to re-summarize what it is that we did in a meeting, like without it being direct portion of conversation.
Yeah,
Well,
and
so that was-
why don't we, let's just, if you, rather than we could re-listen to them, because it's in there, it's in there more than once. It is in there more than once, and it's so important, so.
Well, and we've had that issue discussed in the past where, okay, do we need, what do you call it?
Verbatim.
I said verbatim.
Nope, that's okay.
The French way. Verbatim, so basically like per the word. I understand when you work on the minutes, it shouldn't be a summary. It should be as accurate and close to what
It's not
was-
verbatim.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, I know with Dan Green, we talked about that in the
Yeah.
past. I did spend some time on one specific meeting in January of 2024. It was really easy to do, but I mean, we have to kind of define the line, right? So
Sure.
what do we want to do here? That's, I
And I
guess,
just
my
feel
only
like
concern.
under
Nope, that's
something,
okay.
we're creating a new ordinance, and I do think that we owe it to the townspeople. May choose just to read minutes, or may not, or anybody looking to research it, to really give an accurate summary of why we did it. And I just feel like, I know we spent some time, and I talked to Michelle about this, and that's not really fully in here about the whereas of why we put it in that, that wasn't in the minutes either.
The whereas will be in the ordinance.
Right, and that, but we talked about it at the meeting, and that's not in here either, just, because, that was.
Is there a second?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't second that.
I'm good with leaving them as is, so.
Yeah.
So it fails due to a lack of a second. Is there a motion to just approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
A second?
Motion and second to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-1.
I think-
Next item, actions on vouchers submitted for payment, payroll. I'll make a motion that we approve checks number 68307 through 68330 in the amount of $105,811.58, and for payroll dated January 31st, 2025, in the amount of $17,687.10.
Second.
Motion is second to approve checks and payroll. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-1. Next item, new business, presentation by Mike Waldron, Commercial Insurance Consultant from R&R Insurance. If you'll go to the podium.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks
Welcome.
for giving me a little bit of time to walk through the insurance that we have for our renewal here. I do have to apologize that I wasn't out here earlier, so that you guys had to have this special meeting, so I apologize for that. I thought I was going to be on like the 23rd, but then, was it the 23rd that you guys canceled the board meeting, or, yeah? 28th?
Would have been today.
Oh, it would have been today. Oh, okay, so it is here, okay. So anyhow, we have a renewal. We've been with Community Insurance Corporation for as long as I've been on this account. So that's over 20 years. And I think it's been a good carrier for us. They've kept premiums, you know, at least what I think to be competitive. And, you know, even after, you know, 5 years ago when we lost our truck, our fire truck, to the tune of $470,000, even with a cyber claim 4 years ago, when I look at our renewal for this year, we're at 1.3% higher than we were the year before. So I think, from my perspective, I think CIC is the place to be. We did go out to another market called MPIC on the property, because property's been just one of those coverages that you're seeing carriers get pretty big increases on. And, you know, they provided a little bit better number on the property side than what CIC is. And from my perspective, I think for that extra $1,000, right, that we would save by going to MPIC, I would say we'd stay with the horse we've been with for a long time, right? Because they've paid claims, we know them, we've built some goodwill with them because we've been with them for a long time and had some good years. So that's just my perspective. But stop me as I go through this. I don't know what anybody knows. Well, I got a good feel what Ed knows about insurance. I know Joe knows a little bit about insurance. Ladies, stop me as I go through this if you have questions, okay? So the first page that we have is just showing our property coverage with Community Insurance Corporation. It shows we have a blanket limit for our buildings of $6,646,000, and I've got the breakdown of each and every one of those pieces. We've got contents of $636,000. We've got property in the open of roughly $440,000. Total real property limit of $7,726,000. That includes building, contents, and property in the open. And then we have contractors' equipment. You'll see that schedule later. Then equipment breakdown, that's a part of your property form that you want to make sure you have in place. It's set for what we would call anything that plugs into the wall, right? If we had an electrical surcharge or we had a power outage or something that caused damage to some of our equipment, that's what your equipment breakdown picks up. And so the total cost for the property part is $11,362. We have equipment breakdowns $1,888, and total property premium would be $13,250. We've got a $2,500 deductible on it. So that's really kind of the big picture from 150 miles up. The next page talks about some of the coverages that they have, some of the services that they provide on the property. I don't know if anybody wants to spend a lot of time on that. The page after that, and Ed, just so you know, I gave you a different proposal, not than anybody else, but than the one you originally got from us. I took out 10 pages that weren't necessary,
Okay.
right? That we didn't need to cover on everything. So you're looking at, maybe you had your notes on that old one, you're not seeing anything on it. But so anyhow, next part, those are the enhancements that go along with your property coverage. It's just a summary of, you know, some of the other buckets that if we have a claim, we can pull from, okay? And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to go through that. From a high level, right, to look at, we've got earthquake, we've got flood coverage, we have what we call extra expense coverage. But the rest of it is, you know, they're just coverages that give us a little bit broader coverage.
I'm personally not an expert in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
But what does covered property in transit mean?
So anything that might be on a truck,
Okay.
that might be going to a job site on a trailer, we're going to cover it,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Yep. And then the next page, we jump into subject of coverage, and that breaks down the buildings, the business personal property, and I apologize, guys. That would be this page right here.
Yeah, what page are you? I'm sorry.
Is that 6?
It's, mine's cut off because I made a copy of Michelle's. What page is that, 6? 6, yeah, page 6.
My only question is, why is North Shore Park not listed on the list?
Do we have anything at North Shore Park,
I guess we don't have any real
right?
buildings or anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Where is
And
that
Ed,
located?
we're gonna cover it from a liability.
Okay.
Like, if something happened there, right, slip, tripped, and fell, somebody fell in a hole, we have liability coverage for any property that's within the town. But if there's no buildings there, we wouldn't schedule it,
Okay.
okay? Everything else look okay?
I could ask it later, but since we're kind of looking into, since parks, in the future,
Yeah.
if we were to, maybe talk as a group and as a community and add pickleball courts, I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
Or add a frisbee golf course, or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah, yeah.
So, how does that, what would be the pluses and minuses for doing that from an insurance perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the property piece is easy, right? We set up a couple pickleball courts, it's not a big deal. But, would it be more or less liability than we have for the skateboard park? Obviously, a lot less, right? From a cost standpoint, there would be no change in our general liability because they don't rate on that. They look at a community or a town and say, this is what they do, right? They could have parks. But what we get rated on is the revenue and expenditures that we have as an organization. That's what they rate the GL on. So we could have 1,000 pickleball courts, throw in a couple more tennis courts, except for maybe adding some personal property on our content side, the cost wouldn't go up. But it's good, that's a good question. Would we want to make sure we have it lit properly? Of course, right? Would we want to make sure, that kids aren't partying out there, right? Just like we try to monitor the skateboard park, that would all be the same as what we have for all of our parks already.
So from a liability standpoint, just as you've looked at other communities, adding pickleball courts or other things, I just want to go on record, my microphone wasn't on for any community. It's not like a naysay, like, oh, our insurance would go up. Okay.
No, yeah, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It wouldn't cost us any more. Yep. So that's page 6, jump to page 7. That's just our list of,
I would asterisk that on the liability piece wouldn't cost any more. Whatever the cost of the court or the fixeds or
Right.
whatever would add a premium.
that we add to our
Yeah.
property, yeah, yeah. So then we've got our equipment, right? That's our plow blades and mowers and stuff like that, 1,130,000. We've got all that covered. Donnie has looked through that, made sure we have what we need, okay? I should say Don and Dan both looked through it at the time. And then we have what we call our crime coverage, right? So we have employee dishonesty, theft of 50,000, right? So somebody stealing internally, that's what that's there to cover. Forgery and alteration, we have 50. Inside premises, I know you guys aren't sitting with 50 grand of cash, right? But if you did, that's the limit that we have. And then we have scheduled position bonds for the clerk treasurer and deputy clerk treasurer of 90 apiece for each one of those. So you need to have a bond for those two individual people because our board, our bylaws require those people to be bonded, okay? The town's bylaws require that, so. And then the rest are just what they call a faithful performance bond, what goes along with those bonds that are in place, okay? And the next page is our general liability, our auto liability, and our board legal liability, employment practices liability. We've got a $5 million aggregate limit. And the aggregate limit means we could have one $5 million claim today, and 2 days later have another $5 million claim. Our aggregate limit doesn't get exhausted. We could have 20 of them throughout the policy period. Now, after 3 of them, CIC is probably not going to renew us, but, right, we can have as many $5 million claims. Our deductible is $5,000. That's one option. And then, there's 2 options. If you chose to go with MPIC, CIC on the liability says, I have to charge you more because I'm giving you the bundle, right, the Mahomes bundle thing, right? if you give us your property, liability, auto and everything, we'll give you a better deal than if you just take the liability out, right? So that's why you see two options there. So one is showing package, that's with everything. The liability cost is $24,829. If we just took out the liability piece, they would raise it to $26,463. So, and you'll see that, I've got a premium summary later on. So we have injunctive relief coverage currently. There's a $50,000 option. You know, if we kept it all with CIC, it's $1,600. If we broke it out, it would be $1,720, okay? And then also optional med payments. In the past, we've taken the med pay, it's $150 on the auto. We can reject it if we want. I think it makes sense to have the $1,000 option on the med pay. So any questions on that? You guys, questions with injunctive relief? Everybody feels comfortable with that? Okay. The next is our cyber liability. CIC throws in one of the best cyber liability policies out there. We do a lot of studying these policy forms. We've got first-party and third-party coverage. We had a claim here, I think it's been 4 years ago, Ed, right? Was picked up by Community Insurance Corporation. It's good coverage, and it's needed coverage, right? We have a lot of data, a lot of information in our system. So any questions with any of the liability side?
Well, and what, is it in here about getting sued?
That's
Yeah,
the
that-
injunctive relief.
Yep, that's our,
That's considered what page?
well, we have $5 million if we got sued for something.
That's what you just talked about. That would fall if,
Yep, yep. And then the injunctive relief part is if we got sued and inside that legal document, they weren't looking for any financial harm that they caused, right? So general liability to pick up bodily injury, property damage that we cause other people. The injunctive relief, and we've seen it here. We've seen it at probably 4 or 5 years ago. We had a claim that came in, and they weren't looking for any payment, right? They just want us to change what we had done. We changed some, I don't remember the claim exactly, but we had changed some zoning, and it impacted somebody, and they're saying, hey, I'm gonna fight tooth and nail to get it back to the way it was, right? And so we defended you all the way through there, even though they weren't looking for any financial harm. So injunctive relief is saying, if a claim comes in and they're not asking for any financial harm, we'll still defend you, right? So it's an add-in to the policy.
so if we get covered, and then I know Supervisor Wolfe, you, when it came back to the Thomas Farm thing, you were so concerned we were gonna get sued. So now, and I know my comment was, well, that's why we have insurance. So, I mean, let's do what's right. Let's not worry about getting sued. So you're saying we'd get covered, but I mean, so I would just love to get your
I'm
clarification
not-
on it. Man, well, it just helps me
I'm not
understand.
rehashing why we
Yeah,
would get
that's-
sued. We made
that's-
somebody spend money, we could get sued if
not
we
on the
don't
agenda.
follow
Well, it just helps
an
me
agreement.
understand the insurance. That's why, because you're telling me you're gonna cover me.
It's
That's why I-
basically like when you sued the town and you didn't ask for any financial stuff.
Right.
So that's why we took the injunctive relief after that incident. Because we didn't have that previously.
So we have it now, and if we had gone through and said, you know what, we're gonna stay with what is right and we're gonna get sued, you would have covered us, but Mr. Supervisor Wolfe, you're saying they wouldn't have. That's why I guess I'm just,
I
I need to
didn't-
understand, because this was a real-life thing that just happened to us, and when you and I disagreed on it, and that's why I guess I
Fine,
need
if
to
you want to
understand.
talk about, if you want to talk about a specific instance, that's fine, but like.
But it
we
just
can
helps
do
me
that-
understand.
Yeah,
do
but
that
this
not
isn't
in
on the
this meeting,
agenda, so this
Right,
isn't.
this, what,
Okay, then I guess I'll ask, so then, we make a decision and a developer sues us.
Yeah.
How do you help us based on the coverage we have?
Well, every claim's got to be brought in and handled on its merit, right? So I don't have a scenario, right? But if we've caused bodily injury or property damage to somebody else, we would have $5 million. If they weren't looking for any financial harm and we were sued, we're going to defend you up to the $50,000, right?
But if they were looking for financial reimbursement for, if
And
a
it was
developer was
state-
looking for financial reimbursement for work they performed, and they felt that we didn't honor, how would you have handled it?
It would be picked up underneath the $5 million versus the injunctive relief. The only thing the injunctive relief does is opens the door for a claim that doesn't have any financial harm attached to it, right? But you still might need defense, right? You need somebody to help you get through the weeds of that claim, right? Somebody that really understands the legal aspects of it could be zoning or something like that, right? So it would help defend us during that process if it didn't have financial harm attached to it. Like, often we see, hey, I was injured walking through your park, and I've got a, you know, my medical bills are $10,000, and, you know, I lost work, so that's another $30,000. So that's financial harm, right? Because it's stated in that claim.
And this wouldn't be financial harm, this is just financial expense or whatever that,
It's basically when somebody asks to reverse a decision or something and there's no like, you know, injury or medical claim, it's, you know.
What you're referring to or asking about is saying, oh, well, we would have been covered if, in your words, we'd done what's right. Well, that just be, whatever way that they would cover the lawsuit potentially, right? Based on whatever the claim is, they have to decide if it's a.
Defend and indemnify.
Right?
Yep, yep.
But you could still lose that lawsuit and they paid for the defense of it, right? Which
Up to
still means
$50,000.
that the town may be still on the hook for whatever is covered under the $5 million. Plus, we still have to do what we are found like in violation of by the court, right? So if you lose a lawsuit like that, right, we pay out, they may pay out, but we still have to follow what the judge says and says, hey, you made an agreement with the developer that said if you do this, 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 and this, we will approve your thing, right? And so they would potentially still defend that lawsuit where we could still lose it and still have to follow through with what we committed to the year prior.
And I've got a good
That's what you're
example.
getting to.
I have a good example if you want me to go into it.
Please.
With a school district, right? So a school district redid their whole parking lot, put a new roof on, didn't really change the structure of their land at all, right? And somebody right next to them, right, has a business. And after that, we just had and this is like 7 years ago, we had a huge, I mean, a 100-year rain, right? It flooded their whole area, filled it up with water, right? And they came to us and started suing the school district, says, hey, you know, this, and we're going, it's a 100-year flood that we had. There's nothing we could have done about it. It wasn't because of the changes that we made at our school district. It's just a bad claim scenario, right? So community insurance is defending them, right, and fighting the claim, but is what we've told the school district, if you lose and that loss is saying you have to put a huge berm on, that's your own responsibility, right? We'll defend you, we'll fight for you, but if you lose and there's something that you have to do because the judge has said, hey, you have to put a berm in there now. Because the board said, we're not putting a berm in there. Sorry. I can't go to my community on a 100-year flood claim and ask them to pay for it, right? So does that, I don't know if that
yeah,
helps.
that
you.
actually, that, I mean, I'm just trying to transfer it
Yep.
to how things that we're going to see.
Yep.
That's my,
Yep.
we've seen a little already and we, you know, we'll see in the future.
Any other questions on the liability? Once again, that covers hiring, firing, wrongful termination, sexual harassment as part of employment practices liability. It's a occurrence form, right? It's not a claims-made form, which is the best way to write this policy form. Or I prefer it to have to be an occurrence form. The next page is the auto physical damage piece. We've got a $5,000 deductible. That limit of $1,562,000 is the total of all the vehicles that we have, right? It's just added up. The cost for our physical damage for it is $11,230. Yeah, pretty simple coverage, right? We're covering the physical damage of those vehicles. The next page has the list of all of our equipment. Once again, Donnie has looked at that, and Dan has okayed it. And if we purchase something throughout the year, it's a big truck, right? We automatically get it covered and there's no change in premium, right? So that's just the way it works with the carrier. Workers' compensation, I wish there was a lot I could do for workers' compensation. The rates are set by, go ahead.
When we sell a piece of equipment, are we, and how, does it affect our insurance? Like at the end of the premium, we get a credit or do we get credits
Same
right
thing.
away?
Same thing, right? Nothing changes on the policy this year. So in a way, you know, in the long run, if you're with somebody long enough, you take something off during the middle of the year, okay, but you also added something, it ends up being a wash. But we don't make a change to this policy. We're basically telling you, anything that you buy, right, we have coverage for. We're going to cover any auto that you purchase during the policy period, and we're not going to charge you. Just like when you take it off, we're not
Okay.
going to give you credit. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, right? So then workers' compensation, right, that's to cover our employees while they're in the scope of our employment. The rates are set by the state of Wisconsin. So clerical is at 16 cents per 100, and then municipal operations is $2.50. Those are the payrolls that we're using, so we have 210,000 for clerical, 450,000 for municipal operations, or Donnie's group of guys. Our experience mod is the only thing that we can control. That's just our loss history, the information, our loss history and payroll figures, put into a calculation, it spits out. Being at a 0.8 means we get 12% of our premium taken off of our policy, which is doing good, right? The lowest that we can be, I think, is a 0.87 or 0.67. So we got a little ways to get a little bit lower, but still a 0.88 is doing.
No, it's
doing
really good. The best thing we did was consolidate with Lake Country Fire and Rescue and got the fire department.
Yeah, we got
off,
those.
so.
Yeah.
I think I asked this last year, but I don't remember the answer. You got 100, 500, 100 for the liability limits.
Yeah.
Seems kind of low.
Yeah, so when you think about what those limits are, right, so it's the employer's liability. The statutes for the state of Wisconsin only require us to have 151. If we were doing business in Illinois that has a scaffolding act there, I'd say, man, we need $1 million, right? Because somebody could sue us under the work comp law, and then it would be first the work comp would get hit, and then your umbrella would get hit. So these limits are actually below our $5 million limit. So we do have higher employer's liability because of the liability of the $5 million we have on top of that. But, we don't have any contracts that require us to have the 1 million, 1 million, right? If we were in Illinois, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, I'd say, hey, guys, we better have $1 million because they allow.
And that's fine, as long as the employer practices piece extends from the general liability policy.
The liability
No worries.
over the top of it,
Yep.
yes, yep. So the next page is our premium summary. Pretty simple, right? You see what our premium from last year was in 2024. The difference between 2024 and 2025 is $837 more, or 1.3% more than it was last year. And Joe, I know you do this for a living as well. If I can walk out to a customer nowadays with what's going on in the insurance market with 1.3% increase, guys, I'm jumping for joy, right? And then if we looked at the next column to your right, the 25 with CIC and MPEC, the premium goes from $63,347 to $62,180. So we save about $1,100, guys, but two things. I think it's important to have everything together with one carrier, because if we have one line of business that goes bad, we have the other lines to help out, right? So that carrier's not going, oh my God, I got to raise your rates on the property, or I got to do something on the work comp because one of those lines of business didn't perform well. When you have it all together, you've got a little bit more opportunity to smooth it out for the carrier a little bit. And I'm not that concerned about the carrier, but I would also say that what CIC has done for us over the last 20 years, they've been a phenomenal partner. And each year, like I said earlier, they're 1% to 2%. If our revenues go way up and our expenditures go way up, then their premium goes up along with it. But they've been a good partner. At least that's my interpretation of it, or not interpretation of my feel on it. They've been fair. And what I like about Community Insurance Corporation is that that's all they do is municipalities or public entities. They do school districts and they do municipalities. They write 80% of the counties in the state. They write a lot of cities, they write a lot of towns, and a lot of villages. And almost half the school population in the state of Wisconsin right now. So, and the other thing I'll just throw out is, should something come up internally that you guys want counsel on, don't hire an attorney. Even if it's not a claim, call me. We'll get Brian Nee on the phone and we'll have a conversation with him, and he'll say, hey, this is what I think we should do, right? This is how I'm going to help you. We call it pre-loss control. They're not going to bill us, right? There's no charge for their legal advice during that period. Once the claim happens, right, they're going to defend it and do what's right. But it's just a way to get some free counseling. So I'd say don't hire your own attorney. And I do have school districts that like to keep things really, really quiet, so they use their own attorneys. When you have a teacher that's been accused of some kind of abuse, they like to try and keep it quiet, unfortunately, because it's just an allegation, right? They don't want to ruin somebody's reputation, so I understand that. But use us, right? That's what we're here for. There's no cost to it.
My question, or one question, as far as on the difference, I generally agree with what you said, right? You keep the stuff under one roof, right? In the long run, it ends up typically being a far better scenario all around. But I guess the caveat on that too, the ask on that is, no major policy language differences that one over the other is of a concern.
If I'm going through the policy and I went through, and we write with MPIC, right? We've got a lot of municipalities with MPIC. But I like CIC's policy forms better than I like MPIC. They're real similar because one copied the other, basically.
Right.
But one just gives us higher limits on the flood. One gives us higher limits. I don't worry about earthquake, really. I don't sit and, stay up worrying about earthquake. But they're lower limits on earthquake, right? Lower limits on flood through MPIC. So, yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, if there was any, if there was a reason to move because the coverages were better, Joe, I'd say yes. Yeah, I mean, if there was something that stood out.
Yeah, I look, I look at companies, quote forms
There.
every day.
Yep.
And the reality is when you get into the meat and potatoes of like, oh, gee, they don't have, sure, both of them have law and code listed on the front page, but you get into the policy language, it's like, well, ours is capped at $5,000 and ours is unlimited or whatever. And that's,
Ordinance and law, right? Ordinance and law is a big thing,
Right.
right? In ordinance and law, we have policy limits for A, we have 500,000 for B, C, and D.
Okay.
Right, so that's,
Yeah, you're good.
but that's a good coverage, right? I mean, that's a good piece that you have to look at.
right,
So-
which often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
So, and then also, obviously I don't deal in the commercial market quite on the capacity of municipalities and a whole lot of other things, but I understand. I mean, they do a premium to loss ratio calculation, and there's few places that you get consideration of longevity in the insurance world, and
Getting less and less.
right. But if you were to move a carrier and your premium to loss ratio, right, is way off because now you have a loss in the first year, that's a recipe to get dropped quickly. And then when you go,
Or a big increase.
right,
Or a big increase that year.
and when you go crawling back to your other guy, they go, well, we can write you, but now at the new rate. So, I think the 11-ish $100
$11.67.
is probably well spent
Money
by
well spent for
keeping it-
considering how,
Yeah.
how kind CIC's been to us over the
yeah.
years.
And in reality, like also, would you say a 1.5% increase?
1.3% increase.
The commercial market right now, and again, I don't deal in municipalities, but the commercial market for everything else is like plus 20. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're in a good spot.
We
so.
have had 28 consecutive quarters of rate increase in the insurance world right now. 28 consecutive increase.
Over the course of how long?
28 quarters, quarters.
Oh,
Yeah,
got it, okay.
28 quarters. So that's.
PNC market, or the personal markets hasn't taken it that bad.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, but on the PNC side, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
28 quarters of.
So, well, I would make a motion, or anybody other questions?
Well, I just want
concerns, or-
to clarify the auto med pay endorsement, because in the past, I know that we've rejected it because of the state statutes.
Did we not take auto med pay last year?
As I recall,
You know
in
what?
the years,
No.
we've rejected the auto med pay and we've taken the injected relief. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't taken the, because of the state statute, there's protection. You know,
I mean, it's
My-
$150, it doesn't,
I was
know,
just
but-
saying, my piece on that is one of the things that, well, one, it's so cheap.
Right.
But also what people don't realize about MedPay on auto too, is it does not have to be an actual physical, it does not have to be a collision accident that triggers a MedPay payment. And I don't know, I would defer back to a claims question and the person who's handling our commercial markets, but that could be something where if somebody gets like, cuts their hand on the tailgate of the truck, right? And the question is do we file a work comp claim, or do we take the $1,000 in med pay and have them pay it from the auto policy, right? if the $1,000 in med pay from the auto policy can cover this 2 stitches they need in their hand, that's a whole lot better place to spend the money than having a work comp claim. So,
Yeah, or even Mike Walden and Don's truck, and
Sure.
and we get hit by somebody else that's, doesn't have coverage, right? And so I can't go after that third party that hit us, so, and let's say I go in for an x-ray, right? It would be covered underneath the auto med pay. The exposure isn't big from a med pay standpoint, just because of the state statutes that protect us, right? But for $150, I could argue either way, to be honest with you guys. I could
Well, I just brought that up because I would ask that any motion have the acceptance of the auto med pay and then the acceptance of the injunctive relief.
Yeah, you're right. In the past, we have not taken, I misspoke, we have not taken the med pay before.
and
Yeah, Joe, I mean Supervisor Wolfley, I was just, when I said I could come, I was making sure you were here because this is your line of work. So I'm just sort of following your lead with the questions you would ask because this is what you do for a living, so.
And again, on the commercial side, a little different, but that would be my interpretation of where you could use that med pay and save yourself from what you don't want to have is, you won't get dropped from work comp for having a bunch of little things here and there, but that experience rating goes up. And not only obviously are we getting right now a $1,300 discount for a good experience rating, but if you end up at a 1.2 or a 1.4 or a 1.6, all of a sudden now you're paying an extra $4,000 or $5,000 for that work comp. And if, again, now you're very limited, hey, an injury would have to be related to that vehicle or one of the vehicles. But I don't know where we're typically seeing injuries, if we are at all. But you'd have a better space to say, hey, let's grab it from the auto policy rather than the work comp policy and not mess with the experience rating on the work comp policy, so.
And we were in a bad place, I don't say bad place, but at one point our motto was 1.3, and that was due to some fire-related incidents that we had. And when you look at, now you're paying, that's 40% more than where we are today, right, when you're that high. So, protecting experience mod, I'm all for it. That's.
And if anything, honestly, my guess is to bring that to $5,000 or $10,000, you're probably talking like $300 or $400.
Yeah, and CIC will only offer 1,000.
Oh, okay.
Yep, they only offer 1,000, which is,
Gotcha.
it's kind of great. Yeah, I mean, most standard policies have 5 and 10 on them,
Yep.
but community insurance, just because of statutorily, they don't worry about it, so they don't offer a high limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other?
No, I asked my questions and I was looking for yours, so I could learn from them, so.
I would make a motion to approve the proposal from R&R, specifically keeping everything with CIC, including accepting the injunctive relief and med pay on auto.
A second.
Motion and a second to accept the R&R insurance policy with the acceptance of the med pay and the acceptance of the injunctive relief. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 4-0. I'll sign it in a second. Announcements, there's a town board meeting on February 11th, and there's a plan commission on February 4th. And the next item would be a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
A second.
Motion second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0, we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.